Today, I'm going to show you how Araumi is one of the most broken cards from Commander Legends. This deck is budget, like under $100 if you get rid of basics, and it's very, very strong. Like, I played a game, I killed 2 out of 4 players, and I just lost in a 1v1. That part doesn't matter. The part is, you're able to kill a lot of players really quickly. The only problem with this deck is if you kill players, the ability gets less. So let me just quickly go over what this deck's trying to do. So first things first, you got the Commander Army of the Dead Tide. So it says tap, exile cards from your graveyard equals to the number of opponents you have. Target creature in your graveyard gains Encore to the end of turn. And then Encore cost is equal to its mana cost. So Encore is new in Commander Legends, and it's broken, especially when you have just tap make anything have Encore that's not supposed to have Encore. You think, oh man, it's only a top build. You can't possibly abuse it as much as you can just like say 0 mana and doing it. This card makes it so. Let me just start on how I took this. So in this deck, you're gonna have to try to get as much cards in your graveyard as you can. So the first thing you do is you start with Persistent Partitioners. These cards is a powerhouse in this deck. You get as soon as you get 4, you start milling yourself 12 each time. And it's also consistent because you have 20 of them because you can have any number of them, which also makes it very good. I have some other mills like Sister Supplier. It's mill 3 when it enters, mill 3 when it dies. But if you encore it, since you have 3 opponents, you're going to get 3 copies of Citrus Supplier. And then at your end step, you have to sacrifice the card. So you get to mill 18 cards for 1 black mana. That's pretty good. And I just have a sell-off Oculus just because if you encore a bunch of creatures in a turn, you can end up milling yourself a ton just from just this one card. Now, don't forget, whenever you encore something, it's 3, not 1, but 3. This is very important for the deck. That's also why it struggles when there's only 2 opponents or only 1 opponent. 1v1s are the hardest part of the game. The whole point of this deck is to make sure your opponents can't do anything in the late game. That's the only thing you can focus on in this deck. And then just try to beat them down or mill them out using persistent partitioners. Now, the one problem with this is limiting is a tap ability. So first thing you gotta do is figure out ways to untap. A few ways to untap we have are just creatures that enter the battlefield. You untap it, like Quarter Monitor, and it just says when it enters, you untap target creature or artifact. Another card that does it is when they tap because they all have haste. So you can encore this card and then untap your commander to get another, just to be able to cast something else. In addition, we also have like Fate Shifter, creatures that have flash and also untap stuff or tap stuff. It's just a bunch of different cards that kind of like make your commander go more, that be able to activate it more. Intruder Alarm is another, it's like one of the best cards in this deck because whenever you tap it, you get 3 creatures, 3 Intruder Alarm triggers, and that means you can cast 3 more creatures from your graveyard, which all come in, untap your commander more. So basically it lets you cast any number of creatures as long as you have the mana to, which is very good. Now, a lot of creatures are entering and a lot of creatures are leaving. So we have a few things that do with stuff with that. Like all these drain effects are very good in this deck. Pitiless Plunder, almost broken. If you cast a few 1-drops, it just kind of makes it so you end up with netting mana, stuff like that. Another drain effect. Sir Conrad, it's good because it'll deal damage because a creature leaves. It deals damage because a creature leaves the battlefield. Like they leave their graveyard, you leave the battlefield, and stuff like that. You can also mill yourself to fill your graveyard better. Butcher of Malakir, this card, if you encore it, each creature that dies, they have to sacrifice 3 creatures. This is very quickly going to add up and just annoy your opponents into the point of where you make them concede. Like, it gets kind of brutal. That's also why we are playing literally every single card that says when it enters, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. What's great about this is when they enter, you end up with multiple copies of them, and you can just sacrifice the copies without losing any creatures. But they have to sacrifice 3 creatures each time this happens. That's why you're playing every single one of them. Removal is also very good because 3 times the removal on each creature Meteor Golem I added just because there's some problems with like enchantments and stuff that you can't usually deal with only creatures. So Meteor Golem helps get rid of that. Now in this deck, I have just a few draw spells, and these are basically just creatures that let you draw cards. Baleful Strix is a powerhouse of a card. Death Touch Flying, always good. Floating Dream Zumbra also lets you draw 3 cards when it dies, as if you're encoring it. Let's just read this card real quick. Nope, open it. So it says, when it's put into a graveyard from play, draw a card for each Zubera put into a graveyard from play this turn. I'm probably butchering how to say that, but basically, if you encore it, you end up with 3. All 3 of them die at the same time. You get to draw 9 cards for 2 mana. Pretty good. It's another way to fill up your hand so you can fill up your graveyard. Another card, Dark Prophecy. Whenever a creature you control dies, you draw a card and lose 1 life. That's also good. Erebos. The one problem with this deck is that there's a lot of stuff that says you draw a card whenever a non-token creature dies. I don't think those cards are worth it in this deck at all because there's so many tokens dying that it's very important that you get like benefits off of that, not just non-token creatures. That's why I'm having playing Erebos. Even though you're going to lose a ton of life, if you need cards, you need cards. Smothering Aberration. This is just a draw engine. Every single time you encore a creature, you get 3. You have to sacrifice them on your end step, so you get to draw 3 cards. Species Specialist. Because we're playing so many persistent partitioners, they're all humans, so name humans, and you get to draw a lot of cards. Now, a Murder of Crows is just good, again, because 3 creatures, they all die. You get to draw. Sage of the Falls, same thing, except as when they enter. It basically does the same thing as Murder of the Crows. Now, there's a few creatures that I just added just because they're good when you encore them. Archfiend's Vessel, very good. You exile it, and you could say if it entered your graveyard from your, excuse me, if it entered from your graveyard, which it should be doing, it's going to become 5/5. So now you get a bunch of 5/5s. Cloud of Fairies untaps. You can encore this, net mana instead of losing mana. Cavalier Knight. This is another destroy thing, but it also, when it dies, you get to return something back. So you can probably get at least a few persistent partitioners to get back. If not, you could probably bring back something like Thassa's Oracle or like Sack Outlet, which I'll go over later. Gray is just good. Bring it back. Drain them. It's pretty funny. Peregrine Drake, same thing as the Cloud of Fairies, except it's like overloaded. Usually when you play this card, you get like your entire graveyard out, or you just win the game on the spot. Abhorrent Overlord gets you a bunch of creatures, and if you keep it in, you can just sacrifice stuff that you don't want, stuff like that. Overseer of the Damned, again, a good card. You can just destroy something, and then you get zombies. It's just good. I mean, when it dies constantly, it's not that big of a deal. Next, we have some sack outlets because they're going to die anyway. Might as well get some value off of it. Carrion Feeder is basically just a 1-drop. Viscera Seer is good because it scries. Ghost Rider, I can bring it back. Just scries, that's the only point. And in this deck, there's some creature board wipes because we can, if we're encoring them, we can guarantee that they die. So like Havoc Demon, it says when it dies, all creatures get -5, -5. If you have 3 of them, all creatures get -15, -15. They're dead. There's nothing that they can do to like stop it. It's dead. Massacre Worm. This card is just broken when you have 3 of them in at the same time. All creatures your opponents control get -6, -6 until the end of turn. And also, whenever a creature your opponent control dies, they lose 2 life. That's very mean. I mean, I played this card and I made 2 opponents concede from it. So, yeah, basically, that's good. Massacre Girl, it's the same thing. You're going to have 3 of them, and we're usually going to have a Petitioner out, so that can wipe the board, because all creatures get -3, -3. Whenever a creature dies this turn, it'll do another -1, so it'll be -3, -3, -6, -6. And if you don't kill anything with the -6, -6, then you're probably not going to wipe the board. But besides that, it's going to kill a lot of creatures really quickly in the early game and late game as well. I also have Thassa's Oracle included because petitioners mill you really quick, and you might accidentally kill yourself if you don't do it carefully. So fix it. I think that's it. Oh yeah, maybe board. There's a few things that I was thinking about adding, but I didn't add, mostly for budget or something else. This is one of the few one drops I was thinking about adding, Fairy Miscreant, and it's also good because it's just a 1/1 and it's for 1 mana. It's flying. It's good evasion, and also it draws you cards as long as you control another creature named Fairy Miscreant. This is good because there's not a lot of creatures that do 1 mana draw you a card when it enters, and you can encore it, so you definitely can guarantee the draws. Blood Artist I didn't put in mostly because it's target. I know it's whenever a creature dies, but your creatures are going to die more than your opponent's creatures are going to die. So I mean, as it's also like $3. It's compared to this budget, which is like $100 deck. It's not like it. I mean, you could add it, but you'd have to take out some other stuff, which I didn't feel like trying to balance it out. Dramatic Reversal I didn't add mostly because when playing the deck, I rather encore back a creature because you're not likely to draw this card. I mean, when you get it, you can untap for 2 mana, but I think it's better to have free untaps. Even though this does untap your entire board, I mean, you can mill yourself more, but I think it's more valuable to be able to untap with an encore ability. Mage Right Stone, the same reasoning as before. Better to have a creature so you can encore it. Title Board. Now, this thing I thought was an interesting card. It's a free, basically untap. This I think would be this one I would probably put in before I would put in Dramatic Reversal because free untap is what I was looking for when I'm bringing in creatures. I cut this card mostly because creatures are way more valuable than anything else. Those decks running like 60 creatures. It's pretty insane. So annoying hand stuff. This makes them exile a card from their hand when it enters, and if you have 3 of them in, they have to exile 3 cards. Some more draw. There's some other graveyard hate, some other stuff. Same thing as before with the untap reasoning. I was thinking about adding this because a lot of creatures are dying, and Xanthid Necromancer because we're running a lot of petitioners. You can get a lot of zombies off of this. I didn't think it was worth it quite yet. If you're running more petitioners or dropping other cards, then probably worth it. Yahenni, mostly because the sack outlet doesn't. The sack outlets in our deck basically are just there because they're going to die anyway. So sack outlets are not nearly as important as sack outlets that actually do something. So that's why that Yahenni's not in. I was thinking about adding him mostly because it protects. Amphin Molteneer. This deck is jam packed with creature removal, and it doesn't have as much non-creature removal. So I was thinking about adding that. I instead decided to do Meteor Golem because Meteor Golem allows you to destroy any permanent and they don't get any benefits from it. Breaching Hippocant. This is a too high mana cost for what it does, but I kind of think I was thinking it was worth it. I didn't know for sure. It says untap target creature you control when it enters, so you can untap something like your persistent petitioners and your Araumi, and it works, but it's too much mana. That's why I dropped it. This, I think, it's a little bit overload card draw. It says when it dies, you may draw X cards and lose XI for X is the number of cards in target player's graveyard. You jam-pack this graveyard so quickly that if you do draw the cards, you are basically already so far ahead, and you're going to lose too much life to be able to handle it. That's the only reason why it's not in. I might add it anyway, because card draw is card draw. Same thing here. I think I have enough card draw over here, but Riverrise Argrim I might add because it doesn't make you lose life like Corpse Arger. Slum Reaper, it's similar to this Make Everyone Sack, except it's 4 mana. It got dropped because it's 4 mana. It's not as exactly efficient. River Kelpie only draws you 1 card instead of 2 because whenever you cast a spell from a graveyard, that's what. Oh wait, that doesn't even work. Never mind. That card's just not good in this deck. Get this out. Shriek Maw, I dropped it because it's non-artifact, non-black. If it wasn't non-artifact, non-black, it would be probably a lot better. But that's what I'm thinking over here. I mean, this deck is pretty strong. There is some problems with graveyard hate because as soon as you start to remove the graveyard, the deck just starts to remove its ability to play. It gets very annoying. Now I think I'm just going to quickly show you what it is when you're playing it. Real quick. Shuffle that deck. Okay. Nope, not a good hand. That's okay. Petitioners. Strangely, what's really good about this deck, that didn't do anything, is that your petitioners are basically carrying the mill, and all your other cards are there to make sure you don't die quickly. So I'm starting off by activating your petitioners on the first early few turns. Usually you play your commander as soon as possible. In this deck, you're going to have to worry about making sure you have enough cards in your graveyard at that time. I'm going to cast another petitioners, and then a third petitioners, and now turn 4, you get to mill 12. Whoopsies, I threw one of them in my graveyard by accident. Go back on the board. No, not you. There. All better. Now I need to mill. I had 2 cards in my graveyard, so I'm going to go up to 14 cards because I milled 12. And this card's tapped. Put it over there. And so far, now you have 12 cards in your graveyard, plus any of the extra that you milled for petitioners. So turn 4, you have about 12 cards in your graveyard. And then these next few turns are the parts where you get to mess around with your opponents. So usually at this point, which apparently I don't have one, is some way to make your opponent sacrifice creatures. If you don't, petitioners mill you for 12. If I had 14, so I need 26. There we go. Oh, good. I got a Stitcher Supplier. I think that's what I'm going to do. And you play Stitcher Supplier. Well, look at that. From your graveyard using Encore. Also, don't forget you are going to have to exile other cards, because I usually forget sometimes. So I'm just using this as a token right now because this doesn't have like custom tokens or anything. So then you replay Stitcher Supplier, and because you have 3 copies of it, and when it enters, you mill 3. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And you still have mostly untapped resources. It's only 1 black man to do this. One thing you do have to note is you're going to have to attack everyone, which it's not a big deal because they're going to die anyway. But it's still important to note. What do I have in my graveyard? Is there anything good that I might want to grab? I'm just going to play another Persistent Partitioners and then pass to my end step, which then it dies, and you get to mill 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. I don't know if I counted that right, but it doesn't matter. You have a lot of cards in your graveyard. And you untap, draw for your next turn. Now this is turn 6. No, turn 5. Sorry, I got ahead of myself. No, I missed a land job. Never mind. Turn 6. Yeah. Turn 6, and you mill 12 more. Stop. I don't want to do that. Get out of here. Okay, I messed up this. Oh well. Now, you can obviously see why Thassa's Oracle is somewhat good in this deck. Oh, look at that. I've milled 12 more cards. I wonder what I'll play. What's great about this is when you play a petitioner from your graveyard using Encore, exile, 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 and now this one's the one that came in, right? Yeah, okay. Now you have 3 more. If you have any odd number of partitioners, you're going to end up being able to mill 12 more. And look at that. I'm almost done. My entire deck is almost gone. I think that was about 12. I wasn't counting at all. That should be good. Shuffle. Also, boom. I'm just going to play this guy just on tap something. Next turn, you win. Untap. This thing, these die. Draw. Next, mill 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then you mill 1 more. Pay 2 mana. Tap. Where's ever Thassa's Oracle is, I'm going to play it. I have to go find it now. I'll just exile that one, that one, that one. Thassa's Oracle's in here somewhere. There you are. and you have 3 copies of Thassa's Oracle. So if they stifle one of your triggers, you're going to get one of the other ones. And then you win. Very simple. Easy to play, except for the part where you're actually trying not to kill your opponents. Try not to kill them. I know this sounds kind of hard and counterintuitive, but the whole point of this deck is to have as many opponents as you can so you can get your Encore triggers. So basically, you want to just wipe the board constantly. I mean, it's a little bit of a control, and then mill yourself with your petitioners until you get to Thassa's Oracle and then win. Very simple. I mean, it might be a little bit tricky at first, but after like a game or two, you figure out how quickly you can win and what to control and what not to. I mean, it's a pretty strong deck, and it's also on a budget, so if you probably took up the lands more, it would be even stronger. There might be a few cards I didn't add or didn't talk about because they were too expensive. If you're going to build this deck, you should probably add it because you can make this competitive very easily. But besides that, I think that's all I have to say. So I hope you guys like this deck. And also, if you want me to do some gameplay with this, I will if you just say so. And stuff like that. Goodbye.